Hey, it's Sean here from P2R. Today I got a J35Z2 cylinder block that I'm going to finish up here. This block is featuring a set of our Trom flat top pistons. We got a J37 crankshaft in here, so this is actually just about a some people call it a J36. We got the 3.7 crank, which is a 96 millimeter stroke. We got a set of our I-beam J37 rods, and we went with an 89.5 millimeter piston with a flat top, puts us right around 11:1 compression ratio. I'm going to dive right in and we'll get started.
All right, so the very first step here is to go ahead and get this oil pipe in place. It has two O-rings on it, so I went ahead and lubed them first so they slide in easily. Once I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and get the engine block rotated upside down now, pins. So when you're sliding it into place, you'll actually feel them click into place. Once it's clicked into place, you're going to go ahead and start putting the bolts in. Now these bolts were brand new Honda bolts, and you can see there's a red spot on there, which means they were prepared with some sort of Loctite. This is going to help you keep these bolts from ever backing out. So I'm going to use a gun here to speed up the process, but I'm actually going to go ahead and torque them to spec with my torque wrench. So I'm just going to go through all of it, torque them all. Okay, so now that all the bolts are torqued to spec, I'm just going to go ahead and take a quick look at everything. Just double check them, make sure they all are good. Everything looks great. Being that we're using everything new, there's always a lot of bags to open. You know, with the Honda bolts and everything comes individual, each bolt one by one. But we're going to go ahead and get the baffle plate put on now. The baffle plate itself has 8 holes, so essentially it takes 8 bolts. But we're going to be using only 7 of the shorter bolt. And then there's actually one spot where the oil pickup is going to actually bolt to. So we're only using 7 of the short bolts, and there's going to be one longer bolt that's going to hold the oil pickup in place. So now let's go ahead and get these all started. Alright, so now we got the oil pickup here. You can see it already comes pre-installed with the O-ring. You just kind of want to make sure you have that in place when you're lining it up over the oil pump. And as you can see here, these are the longer bolts that I mentioned earlier, because these have to go through the oil pickup and then into the block. Now that they're all in place, I'm going to go ahead and just work my way around this and get them all torqued to spec. Alright, so just like the oil pump itself, the oil pan just needs a nice layer of Honda Bond as well too. It doesn't use any gasket there, so we went ahead and put a layer of Honda Bond on it, and we're going to go ahead and catch all the bolts for the oil pan. Now the oil pan itself just uses 2 different length bolts for the whole thing. You have a short one and you have a long one. So when you're putting it in place, just make sure you check, just look carefully. You can clearly see which one takes a short bolt and which areas take the long bolt. Also, you want to make sure you're getting this done while the Honda Bond is still wet and still fresh. That way you can have everything torqued and sealed, and the Honda Bond will dry properly. Once I got all the bolts in place, I'm going to go ahead and use my torque wrench and just kind of work my way around it. Make sure all the bolts are torqued. Again, this step is always best to do right away. You want to make sure that it's all done right after putting that fresh Honda Bond on your oil pan. Alright, now that the oil pan is on, I'm going to go ahead and get this engine rotated back over with the pistons facing up. This way I can move on to getting the ARP head studs in place. I always like using the ARP studs. It just makes the process go so much easier, and also, you know, it's a lot better than the factory bolt. Gives us a lot more clamping force, and these are able to torque as much up to 90 foot-pounds. So the studs actually need to be hand tight, so I'm gonna use the gun here just to kind of speed up the process, but I'm not clicking them down because you don't want to over tighten the stud. ARP recommends just hand tight for them. So here, just having a little bit of fun with it, but essentially I'm just going to put the motor very close to TDC. I'm actually going to set it slightly off so that none of the pistons are actually fully up. But before I get back to finishing the cylinder head, I'm going to go ahead and just put the water pump on here. The water pump is just like the oil pump in the sense of it has dowel pins that help hold it in place until you put all the bolts in and get it torqued. Now I got here a pair of R70 cylinder heads. I already went ahead and put the rocker assemblies and everything back in. So those heads are pretty much ready to go. So now I got the head gaskets. These are just 2 brand new Honda head gaskets. I put the dowel pins in place, which helps keep the gasket perfectly centered how it's supposed to be. And we'll go ahead and get the heads rest on. Now when you're putting the heads on, you do want to make sure that it falls properly over the dowel pin and is sitting flush. Now that the heads are in place, I need to put the ARP washer over all of the studs. You definitely want to make sure you have the washer over every stud, and don't accidentally forget the washer and go straight to putting on the nuts. You don't want to have the ARP nut torquing into the aluminum. Now you want to be extra careful when you're putting these washers in place. You want to make sure that none of them actually, you know, fall and get lost somewhere in the head or even down the oil drain back. That'd be a real pain to get out. Now that the next step is to get all the nuts put in over all the washers, and then I'll go ahead and use the gun here just to kind of get them all down pretty quickly. Again, I don't actually use the gun for applying any sort of torque pressure. I just do it to get everything down quickly. Now before I torque the heads, I need to go ahead and put a cam seal. We're going to use our cam seal install tool here to go ahead and get the seal installed quickly and easily. This is a seal that we offer that makes installing the cam seals very easy. I did apply some oil to the outside of the seal so that it slides in smoothly and doesn't tear the seal while installing it. Once the seal is down in place, we just loosen the bolt back out and we remove the tool, and then you have a seal that's perfectly installed. And we're going to do that one more time on the rear cylinder head here. We put the cam seal over the cam, we grab the tool, and basically screw it into the camshaft itself, and just screw it in until the cam seal is seated properly. Now this is a step that really is just definitely for visuals. We're using the P2R billet cam cap seal here. This engine was going to need a cam seal either way. The cam seal actually is 100% needed for keeping, well, for one, for keeping oil in the engine, but as far as when you're assembling an engine, you want to make sure that the cam stays in place, and the cam seal actually stops the cam from left and right movement. You'll notice if you ever rotate an engine with the time belt on, if you take this cam cap off, the camshaft will actually try to run away. It might move a little bit left, it might move a little bit right, and it can even actually make it jump from off of one of the rockers. When putting this in place, it's always good to put a little bit of oil on the O-ring. It makes it slide in just as easy as you saw here. We provide the new stainless steel Allen head bolts just for a nice sleeker look. Now I'm going to go and get all the timing components put on. So this is the crank gear, which is what's going to keep the belt or the belt rubbed against the crank and the keyway in place. And then we have an idler pulley with a bolt that actually locks it into place properly. Then we have our P2R timing belt, manual timing belt tensioner. I'm going to go ahead and get that screwed in. And I like to use the factory bolts there as it's a nice hardened bolt. And we have our pulley here, which is actually used as the adjuster. And this is what actually tightens the belt when we tighten the tensioner.
All right, so that's it for today's video. We got the cylinder heads on, and in the next video, we're gonna go ahead and get the cam gears and the timing belt put on, and we'll go ahead and adjust the valves and get this motor finished up. I'll see you guys again soon.